Okay, so in this lesson I'm going to quickly talk about just a quick revision of what we're likely to see in the trial in terms of drawing. So when we talk about drawing, there's three main things that we can be looking at. First of all, we can be asked to draw, and I'm starting with this one because it's the hardest and the most of a pain in the butt, is doing development drawings. Development drawings, if that word is new to you, you need to let me know. But development drawings are the idea that if I was to draw a cube, right, the development of a cube is this, what we also call a net, would be that shape there. In order to do that, we need to find true lengths of the shape, and the true lengths are the difficult part of that in order to produce that shape. The chances of there being a question on development drawings is increasing, but still not high. I would say that it's a 50-50 chance that there'll be a question at all. There's probably at least 1 mark, but I'd say on average 2 marks. So that means that there might be 1 mark or it could be 4 marks. You just don't know. Development drawings have been more frequent in recent years. The next type of drawing that we can do, which is also, this one's decreasing, but we've made more of it, historically has been much more important, is isometric drawings. I just drew an isometric drawing there. The idea is that they will give you a top view, a front view, let's go with something like that. A front view that looks like that, and a side view. Right, and then from that drawing, you then, if you guys want to quickly take a crack at this, right, that's a question you could get. What we'd have to do is we'd have to draw that shape. So if I say draw it from this direction, well, I would draw Now, I made a comment before about drawing implements and how you guys didn't take drawing implements into your last exam, or maybe 2 of you did. The fact is, isometric drawings have become much less common in recent years. I don't think there's been one for well over 5 years at this point. Well, certainly comfortably 5 years. Obviously, this is not drawn to scale, but let's say this drawing would be worth 4 marks. If what you did here, you're getting at least 2 marks. Right? Now I did that without a pencil. I did that with a whiteboard marker without rulers. Now typically they'll probably have some other details, like they'll have, say, a circle, right? There's no real good spot to put a circle in. But where I'd lose, of those 4 marks, obviously I'm going to lose a mark for scale, right? This thing is totally out of scale, right? So that's fine. I can accept that I've lost a mark there. The last mark would be, well, can I see a clear difference between construction lines and development lines? This question probably wouldn't be worth 4 marks. This would be maybe worth 3 marks, in which case I'd probably get 2 out of 3. Now again, I've never personally marked a drawing question. I've only seen markers and spoken to the markers who do drawing questions. But typically what they'd have is they'd have a question. Usually these questions will have some sort of circular component, right? Because that's what they want to test. And the circle, that sort of detail, the fact that if I left out a line, that's the sort of thing where you lose marks. These questions are a lot less common. I would focus on them, but I would focus them as a secondary consideration. The thing that if you're only going to worry about one kind of drawing, these are the drawings you need to study because they have been in every exam. They're very, very, very likely to be in your exam, and that is isometric, orthogonal drawings, threaded orthogonal drawings. So what I would expect they'll do is they'll give you some sort of assembly. So they'll show you some pieces of things that have been put together. And then what you need to do is, let's just say I have a bolt into 3 pieces of metal, right? That's pretty simple, right? This is my drawing. They'll give you a sample drawing and they'll say, here, look at this. We have this assembly drawing, and through them there is a bolt that is going to hold them in place. If they had this question, that is a terrible looking bolt, but it will serve our purposes. This is a question that's reasonable for us to do. They'll always ask, you should prepare to have a question that has a threaded section, right? So what that means is, if we're drawing this shape, what would that look like here? We draw our 3 pieces of metal, and then through the middle we want to show our bolt. Now you don't section bolts. Well, if you do section bolts, you section bolts differently. I made a video talking about how to section bolts. Right, so you have dark lines on the outside. Let's assume it's that much longer. Actually, that should be a light one. And then you have light lines on the inside to show where the teeth would be. You don't section the head of the nut, or if you do, look, in this particular case, the head of the nut looks like that. If you're drawing from this arrow, which is convenient, it makes life a bit easier. Now, your sectioning lines, I'm going to show the sectioning lines in blue. I don't have blue out. I'm going to show that in blue just to show that it should be a lighter line than everything else. Line thickness and line weight are really important. All of your lines should be dark lines except for construction lines. What we want to show, the big thing we want to show is the thickness of our lines. So, what we're going to do is we're going to show in thin lines, that's important, we're going to show the direction. These lines here should also be in blue, just to show that they're thin. Oh, I did it right the first time. Now, here, to show that they're different materials, we use different spacings and different angles. That tells the person knowing these are different things, they're from different materials. If these two things were joined together, you can't do that very easily actually, not with an exploded drawing like I've got here. You would show them in the same direction to show that they're part of the same material. Now, the big things that you also need to do is you need to include center lines. Right? Center lines tell people that there is a cylinder or a sphere in the shape. So that in the case that here we have bolts through each of these plates, and to indicate that, we use a center line. Now the center line is shown as a thin, dark line. The length, the dots and the dashes can be varied as however you need, right? Whatever suits you. I would suggest that 1 to 5 is probably the minimum you want to have to clearly indicate that it's not a hidden detail line. Now, we don't really do hidden detail. If you haven't noticed, we haven't done a hidden detail drawing in the last year, right? If we do hidden detail, it is thick, dark lines, equally spaced, usually 3mm on, 3mm off. Right? But I'm going to remove that because you don't even want to worry about hidden detail. It's not something we show in our drawings typically. Now, there are some things that you need to know. You need to know the relative to the diameter. If we're drawing a bolt, what is the thread thickness? This is our threaded hole. Whereas compared to this being, I did it wrong again. I wanted to start with the outside. Okay. Okay. This, I'm taking a pun here, I'm saying this on camera, this is our bolt, right? The thick dark line indicates the material as it came out of when it was forged, right? What we call the shank. Right, then the thin section line, right, the thin line that's a broken line, shows where the teeth have been cut away. Yeah, where someone has gone and used a tap and die to cut away out material. So the thick dark line shows how it existed in the before time. Here, this represents a hole. This represents that there's material here that when this sheet had a hole punched or drilled, right? We get a thick dark line, and the blue line, the thin line, the section line, the broken line, that line indicates where the teeth have been cut away, right? So these represent different things. Now, if we want to talk about the distance between these things, right, the distance here is what we call the D min versus D. So in this case here, what we're talking about is the D is the original shank dimension. Call that D. Here, we have D min. Now, if you're not told the diameter, if you're not told the pitch of a thread, how do you work out what the D min is? You can do it formulaically. I have a picture of Clive Palmer and Ryan Gosling to help you remember. If it doesn't tell you, it's a coarse thread. Coarse thread is D min equals 80%. If on the other hand it's fine, they will tell you the pitch. So let's say they told you the pitch and they said it's an M36 fine, so we're going to say 3 times 3, right? In this case here, if we did this question originally, right, so what's 80% of that? 80% of 360. Divided by 7.2, it's a bad number, but I should use something like 40, but anyway. 28.8, okay. Okay, whereas on the other hand, if it's a fine thread, right, it's going to be 36 minus 3, right? D min equals D minus P, minus the pitch. The idea there is that if it's that, the pitch, this here is half the pitch, and this is half the pitch. Okay, now, I'm going to give you one last tip. If you have to draw a hex nut, I told you earlier that can be a bit hard to do. Technically, you're supposed to draw the hexagon like this, right, and figure it out. I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip. If you're drawing the threaded section like that, these two lines are in between, pushing slightly more to the out. That's a little tip. No marker is going to be able to tell the difference. See you guys. Have a great...